7. Yeah, we're live. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Yeah, so we'll just have a little social for a couple of minutes, and then as soon as it's 7:30, yeah, that's a good idea, this, because it will allow people to log on, won't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it to pop up.
Nice.
Women driven to play sport. Nikki Jarvis journey.
Actually, I've never actually seen this before, so I'm going to go on the iPad to see how it flags up.
Oh, I like how you get about an inch further away every week from your phone, Dad.
What, in my eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought we got chat on here. Or is that only on the Facebook page?
No, there's chat there. There's if you look down, we already have a chat going.
Do we? I can't see that. I can see the
We don't want
live.
to spoil the secret. We're streaming live now. We can't spoil the secrets.
Sorry, say again, Mark.
So we're streaming live now, so we don't want to spoil the secrets for the viewers of how we do this.
Oh, somebody's already on chat at the moment. We've got one on chat. Let's go.
Live chat.
7:20. As soon as it hits 7:30, I'm going to open up this.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, there's a bit of a time lag on it, isn't there?
No. That's if anybody uses bad.
Sorry?
How are you, Mark?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. You'll find it shortly how good I am until you get interrogated.
I've said I'm watching already. Right, that's 7:30, team. Are we all ready?
Yeah.
Good to go, Dave.
Good. A very warm welcome from Table Tennis Scotland. Our special guest tonight is England's under-21 #1 and Britain's top backspin player, 19-year-old Sam Wilson, who is also playing full-time in Sweden. He's been joined by two familiar figures, or two familiar faces. His coach, Adam Wilson, who made such a big impact at our last Inverclyde Summer School, and Dad Colin, who is a Commonwealth medalist and an expert exponent of playing against backspin. My right-hand man, once again, is former Scotland Junior International and National Selector Mark Lundberg. Matt Norbury will once again be picking up your responses and questions on YouTube and try and get them in early, not at 8:25 when we're about to wind up. Anyway, we're going to start a new regular feature by who's had a birthday since last week. And we've had two very important birthdays. And the first one is Sam and Adam's granddad, Terry, who's a pivotal force at Ellenborough Table Tennis Club, and our own Billy Main, who heads the North Ayrshire Table Tennis Club. So I hope you both had a good birthday from all of us here. Right, let's, although this is really Sam's show with his coach and his dad, we always turn back the clock. And I'm going to sort of paint the picture is back in the day, or it's probably the same anywhere, is the opening season tournament is vital. And everybody rushes to get to that opening season tournament, whether it's North Ayrshire in Scotland or Perth. But in England, it was always the Kirklees, because if you had a good opening season tournament, then it would put you in the front line for selection. So basically, all the top players are there, and it's the final. And the final is between Philip Bradbury and Colin Wilson. Now, while Colin tells you this story, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just going to sit and read the Moffat News. Over to you, Colin.
Okay, well, Dave's put me up for this one. So I played Phil, big mate of mine, back in the 80s. It was the Kirklees 2-star. It was the final, up to 21, best of 3. And I was about 12-6 down in the final game. And it was going against me. And every point I lost, Phil was giving it all this stuff. And it was getting annoying. and I thought he was being over the top, and I got the 17-7 down, and he won the point. Yeah, gives all this round, almost coming up to me around the net, and I just got fed up, and I just thought the umpire should have said something. So I just went to my table tennis bag around the side of the net, and I had a newspaper in there, and it was a Sunday, and I got the newspaper out, and I thought, I'm not going to play anymore. I'm just going to read the newspaper. So I got the newspaper out of my bag, put it on the table. We got about 250 people watching in the bleachers, final of a 2-star. And I got it out, and I literally sat on the table with my legs hanging off the side and started. And I just thought, what's interesting? And I just thought, oh, Sheffield United played last night. That's my team. I'll see how they did. So I turned over the back page, and Sheffield United 2, Wolves 1, I think it was. And I started reading the report, and the umpire just looks at me like I'm completely mad, which I clearly was. Phil kind of looked at me as if to say, what the heck are you on? And I just thought, well, I just got to, something's got to change, and, someone should be picking up on this behaviour. We're supposed to be having a nice game of table tennis. So I'll carry on when it's a nice game of table tennis. Competitive, fine. I still want to win. And I sat there, and then the umpire said, play on, Mr. Wilson. And I just completely ignored him because I thought he should have done more before, and he should have been complaining at the other guy, not me. And he said again, and then he threatened he said, you got 2 minutes, otherwise you'll be scratched in the final. Whisperings in the crowd. And I just sat there pretty motionless and just turned over the page and read something else, agony aunts or something. And I pushed it I did it in my head, but within probably 10 seconds of my 2 minutes, or you'll be scratched. So it really went on, this thing. And I thought, well, shall I play? Shall I not play? Shall I play? And I thought, okay, I'll play. So just closed it down, put the paper back in my bag, looked up at Phil, and I thought, whoa, Phil's lost it. Phil looked like kind of nervous. Anyway, played the next point and I won it. And the whole crowd pretty much stood up and clapped. And then I was serving. So 8-17, 9-17, 10-17, 11-17. I thought, I'm back in this. And clearly I'd rocked my opponent. And you could say it was, histrionics or gamesmanship on my part, but it was really just a natural reaction to what I was facing. And I actually won it 21-18. And at the end of it, massive round of applause, and people came up to me, and that was the first and only 2-star that I ever won, but I won 250 quid. Luckily, Phil took it very, very gracefully, and there's a bit of argy-bargy going on around the place. But to his absolute credit, Phil just afterwards, he just said, well played, and a couple of weeks later, I was around his house playing Monopoly.
There we are. There we are. It was absolutely, the reverberations went the length and the breadth of English table tennis. Everybody was talking about it for, and basically until the Midland 3-star, which would have been the next big tournament. Yeah. You ask anybody, you ask Don Parker even now, they'll all remember that Kirklees tournament. Anyway, Colin, we're not here to talk about you.
No,
we're
not at all.
To talk about the 19-year-old backspin player, chopper, defender, all these terms we can argue about. Peter Shaw, very interestingly, he believes there is no such thing as a chopper now. They're all hybrid players. But anyway, Sam, tell us how you got involved in table tennis.
Yeah, okay. Well, as you heard, my dad was a professional player when he was younger, so he got me involved quite early. I think we've got a couple of pictures of me kind of holding a bat and a ball when I was 5 or 6 or something like that. So I got involved really early because of my dad. And then I think I decided to kind of take it a bit more seriously when I was about 9-ish. I was going to a few camps at my granddad's club, Ellenborough, over the summers and stuff. But so I decided to take it a bit more seriously when I was about 9-ish. And I played till I was 12 and a half. So I had a good kind of 3.5 years of, playing properly there, seriously, more than leisurely. I was training at Kingfisher quite a lot. And my best at the time, I think, was number 2 under 11s behind James Smith. So I was always, we'd have a lot of close games, but from what I remember, I was always behind. Yeah, so that's a bit about my how I got started and kind of my earlier career of table tennis.
Yeah, and then were you going away from the table then? Were you a hitter? What were you doing, or were you just learning all the skills?
Yeah, so 9 till 12, I was hitting, and then I decided when I was about 11 and a half, 12ish, I thought I'd just try defending. I remember I used to always go back from the table and kind of lob and fish and kind of mess about because I thought it was quite fun. And my dad said, if you want to do that, if you want to go away from the table, the only way you can win properly is by chopping, as opposed to just lobbing the ball up and let them smash it past you. And I went, yeah, all right, I'll do that then. So then I did that for 6 months or a year-ish until I had some health problems, which caused me to have to step away from the game till I was about 15 and a half-ish.
Is that about right, Colin? Has he got the story about right?
Well, he started playing when he was naught.
Yeah.
In terms of you just roll any kind of ball at him, and he crawls around the room, and did the same with Adam, of course, as lots of sporting parents would do. And we had him catching. I've got one up on the wall here. One and something. He's catching a ball that his mum's thrown to him, about that big. Table tennis, I think the first photo I've got is 2 years old. I think he was wearing a nappy and just hitting the ball up and down on his forehand side, quite inefficiently, but he's getting there at the age of 2. So Sam remembers actually hitting a ball out on a table at age 5. But you've got all those kind of pre-activities that parents do with their kids, and we tried to make sure we did that with both the children. In terms of
and then this is a little bit where interesting, Colin. Then he's playing table tennis, and then he's going to play differently to 9 out of 10 players.
Yeah.
When did you spot that?
A tournament. So he practiced. His granddad had Adam and Sam on a training camp. They played all week in half term, backhands, forehands, hit. And then Sam decides he wants to play in a tournament, put him in a tournament. I'm sat in the corner trying to be not particularly interventionist. It's just kids having a game. But I'm there as his dad. And the other person served, and he pushed it back. And then the other person hit it, and Sam's on the barriers. And the ball goes about 40 miles up in the air and misses the table. And I thought, is there something wrong? And the next rally was the same. And then Sam served, and the guy hit it to his forehand, and he goes running to it and hits it just before it bounced on the floor. And the next one, he's at the barriers again. So I was almost having a conversation with Sam back at the barriers while he's playing the rallies. And I'm just saying, keep up, Sam. And he went, yeah, okay. And it just didn't happen. And I don't know if it was just because he had more fun back there, or whether it is just natural. So we talked about it. We played around with it. We went to see Pete Charters, who's a chopping coach, as you know, with several very, very good choppers, including Matthew Syed and Dave Barr. And then put it to Sam, would he like to have a go at chopping? And he did. And Pete Charters, bless him, did him loads of multi-ball and showed him a few techniques alongside the work that I was doing with Sam. And then a chopper was born. But the reason was, but he just ran away from the table immediately, and which was very puzzling to everybody because it wasn't what he'd practiced at all.
And bringing Adam here, had you started coaching Sam at that point, or was your role, was you just a practice partner at that point, or was you coaching Sam?
So I kind of came involved a little bit later. So as Sam said, there's some health struggles which caused the gap for a few years there. What age did you come back into the game, Sam?
15 and a half.
It was
about when I was involved with Sam as well, came back into the game.
Sam, I think you were 16 already. 16 and a half.
16. So then it was
16 and a half. He didn't play at all.
So Sam was always, the top couple in, top couple in the country for your age, under 11s, under 12s. Took 3 years out, and then it was when he came back in at 16, it was a race, as a team of brothers to get him, back to where he was, and he's now far exceeded where he was before, and it's quite incredible that he took 3 years out, and he's already surpassed where he was before, and that's kind of where I became involved.
Adam was very much involved when Sam came back in.
Excellent. Just before I bring Mark in, when you came back after your 3-year break, did you come back with feeling more pressure? I've got a lot of catch up to do, or did you feel actually I'm quite relaxed about this?
Yeah, well, some of the health problems was mental health. I really struggled with that, and the reason I kind of got involved in table tennis was my dad had the club Corby Smash, and it was really just a thing to do as my mental health was starting to get better. It was a thing to do, but it was also, a place I could go where I could feel better about my mental health. So the focus from the beginning was never, oh, I want to be this good or I want to win the Olympics. It was just get my mental health better and just something to do. So initially, no pressure at all. Then me and my brother started to practice more and more, all down at Corby Smash kind of during the days. And yeah, the pressure started to mount a little bit more, but it was quite a while before I remember feeling too much pressure. It was a good year after I started again before I remember feeling too much pressure, because I was still getting going again. I remember I played one tournament around this time when I was about 15 and a half, 16, whatever. And I got ranked like 227 in the juniors, something like that. Remember, I lost to someone who was about 200 in the juniors, so they put me there. Yeah, so to answer your question, not so in the first year and a half.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Mark now. Off you go, Mark.
So it's probably worth me declaring straight away that a lot of my questions tonight have been influenced by Peter Shaw. So Pete's put some material in before our session tonight. So thank you, Pete. I always thought we were on the same wavelength anyway, if you're watching, because there's a lot of stuff there which is questions I would ask a defender. So we're probably speaking on for both of us tonight on some of the questions we're going to come up with. But I wanted to start with of identifying a defensive player. So obviously we've got Sam's story. So maybe a question to Adam to begin with, where if as a coach now, are you influenced by seeing a player in the hall that's really good at lobbing, that goes back from the table? And I think that's a good example of what Sam did in his first tournament. Would you be keen straight away to push a defensive game on them? And it'd be good to go around to Colin and Sam and get your thoughts about that, of identifying a defensive player from a young age.
Well, I'm going to sound really horrible, but I'm going to go straight into a phrase you said there, which is, would you encourage them, as a defensive player? And I don't see it as a defensive player at all. And I know it's probably not your intention, but I'm digging straight in there. But no, I think it's a mindset, and I'm sure Sam will agree with this. But I think there is nothing defensive about a very good defensive player. I'll let you expand on that, Sam, because I'm sure you're going to want to dive in on that statement.
Yeah. So I would agree. To answer your question at the beginning, if I saw a younger player lobbing, I wouldn't push a defensive game on them, but I would suggest it. I would let them know it exists, because probably when I was, lobbing my first tournament, 9 years old, no, not 9, whenever it was, I probably didn't know defense really exists. I wasn't really thinking about it in that way, and so I was kind of messing about for the first couple of years until someone, I think it was my dad, suggested defense. I never even thought about it. And with Adam's thing, I use the term defense as in, because it's a universal term, but I don't think there's anything defensive about it. I think if you think in the mindset of defending or retrieving or just getting the ball back, you'll get beaten up completely on the table. It's just not going to work. So I think the key to being a good defender is being aggressive and attacking. Just because you're playing backspin shots doesn't mean you can't be an attacking player.
Colin, anything to add to the boys' opinions on identifying a player or whether it's defensive or not?
Yeah, if you take one of the players I mentioned before that Pete Charters brought up, Dave Barr, big mate of mine, went to university together and stuff. I'd describe Dave as a retriever and a defensive player with the occasional hit, not all of which he got on. I just say that as a mate. And that's one way to do it. Matthew was, in younger years, Matthew Syed was a bit defensive in the way that he chopped. The objective with Sam is that there is nothing defensive about Sam's game. He chooses to use backspin and variation aggressively. So all we're doing is using backspin and variation to shift the seesaw of power in the point from 50-50 to more than 50-50 in Sam's favor. If that can be done by hitting a ball, he'll hit it. If it requires a loop, he'll loop it. If it requires a side spin chop block, he'll do it. If it requires a full-on chop, he'll do it. If it requires a float, he'll do it. So he'll do whatever it takes to increase the probability that he'll win the point, pushing the power of that kind of the advantage into the next shot of the rally every time. If that happens to be a backspin or a float, then so be it.
I think it's a sort of led it and you picked up straight away. My personal perspective on a defending player, and I think this Pete Shaw's point and what Dave alluded to earlier, was it's not defensive. So I think that the terminology confuses people.
It does.
It's a negative term, but my personal experience of playing a defender, I hate it, because if I played to the forehand on a weak shot, the ball's going past me. On a modern day defender. So, and I use examples when we were talking there earlier about lobbers. Now, no offense, Chris Main, one of our best players in Scotland, attacking player, but I would say he's one of our best attacking defenders because his lobbing play or ability away from the table of putting a player under pressure isn't defensive. It isn't negative because he gets himself back in the point by maybe being back from the table, but his defensive game is that good. And I think that's that modern day player that the terminology confuses things because actually the modern day defender, their attacking shots are actually better than some attacking players. As crazy as it sounds, their forehands and how dynamic a forehand can be compared to a player up to the table or a counter hitter, I think goes against that term, which obviously covers off Pete's point about the terminology of a hybrid. So I think there's some good points there that actually a defender is actually an attacker. Is that statement that sounds?
Yeah. And if I could just add one small piece to that, Mark. I noticed you talk a lot about forehands, which of course, is widely considered one of the most, dominating shots in the game. But, if you play Sam and you play a weak shot to his backhand, as Dad said, it's about what shot is, the most effective, whether that be a backspin stroke, a topspin stroke, the timing, whether you're behind the table, close to the table. It all depends on what could be the most relevant to the ball that comes to you. And if you play a weak ball to Sam's backhand, he might run around and play a forehand, but there's nothing stopping him twiddling and playing a flipping great backhand. So I think that's always something to remember as well. And identifying, a young player, rather than trying to lock in a style, I would try and encourage a lot of experimentation so that they have the opportunity to use all these different shots, great backhands, great forehands, whether they backspin, topspin, at different timing points, close to the table, far away. And then they can make their choice as they, become a little bit more experienced on how they want to shape their overall game. So Sam looks to the rest of the world like a defender, but really what he's done is he's just learned all the different shots. And then he can kind of choose the most appropriate one in the moment. And he happens to choose more backspin strokes than some other players. But I think that's something that I see quite often in young players is that they don't practice a wide variety of strokes. They just drill in topspin strokes, which is great. But it might not always be the most effective shots for the ball that comes to you.
I think that's a brilliant point, Adam, that I think the definition, if we're going to call it a hybrid player, which seems to be a terminology we're settling on, I think what makes it good ones, and obviously Sam's success even early on, and looking at other players, it's the area of that you don't know what's about to happen. So if you play a local league player, which I've done many a times, if they're a defensive player, it's fine. I'll play to their back. They don't twiddle. I'll play to their backhand all day long. I know if I play a weak shot to the forehand, just use the forehand or even their backhand, whatever way they're chopping off, it's going to hit past me. But the modern day hybrid player is that if you play a weak ball, if you just play it halfway to the table or play it high over the net, then that ability to come in and attack it or vary, whatever it is. And I think that's what makes the great ones in looking at sort of modern day players. We'll probably come on to it, but one of Pete Shaw's point was about world championship players. But one of the players that influenced me that I used to love watching back in the mid-90s was Ding Song, who won, I think it's the world team event. We beat Peter Carlson and Tianjin in '95, got to the semi-finals of the world individuals. But watching him play was my first influence of saying, this isn't a defensive player, this is an attacking player. So
an
yeah,
attacking chopper.
Yeah,
an attacking chopper.
Yeah.
Can I just come in now? And I'm sure a lot of people are interested. There's so much we've got to talk about. I mean, one thing I want to bring in later: how come you've got this good so quickly? When normally a backspin player, the apprenticeship is a lot longer, where somehow from the age of 15 you become England #1 in about 3.5 years. So that's my. But no, I think I'm going to start with that question. Why do you think you've got there so quickly?
Yeah, well, I think I had a good base. As Dad mentioned, Peter Chartered, he was absolutely fantastic for me. When I was kind of experimenting with chopping and doing it a bit, like proper chopping as opposed to just lobbing the ball up and stuff. So I think I had a good base. But then when I came back, when I was like 15 and a half, 16, whatever it was, I think it was a mix of, I had the opportunity. I had my dad's club, Corby Smash, and I had Adam, a great practice partner and a fantastic coach. But I think really the thing that did it was our philosophy from the very beginning is don't just hit balls. Sometimes we'd go to practice and we'd spend longer off the table than we would on the table. And we'd get a flip chart and we'd get a pen out and stuff. And we'd go, okay, if someone does this, what do I do? If someone does this, what do I do? And we just talk about it all the time. And watch table tennis on YouTube, watch videos, watch clips everywhere. And I think that's the thing that did it, not just hitting balls, because anyone can do multi-ball or hit a million balls and not be any good. But I think that was the main reason for the rapid improvement, which was thinking about exactly why are we doing this. So I never went into an exercise going, okay, I'm going to hit some balls. It was always, I'm doing this because, I remember I played a tournament where I lost to Cheyenne Siraj, the junior #1. I was about 50 in England, and I lost 0-6 and deuce. And he had just hit the ball faster than I had experienced before. So on the Monday morning, me and Adam went into training, and I just got Adam to kind of just serve the ball or whatever, and I just pop it up a little bit higher, and I'd say just hit it as fast as you can. And we did that for just simply that for 45 minutes, an hour. You get used to it, and then you go, okay, well then what with the next ball? Starting to get not just this ball on, but quality on this ball. So that was another big philosophy of ours, which is if you lose, identify why you lost and fix it in the next week, and then you can't lose to that type of player again. So that was another thing that I think definitely contributed to the rapid improvement.
Also, I mean, on my trip to Corby Smash, it was just a table tennis environment. Yeah. Good tables, very good coaches, good practice partners. It would be difficult to be a failure there, wouldn't it? But it was up to each individual to make the most. I mean, you've got Henry. He was always there working away, Henry Arthur. When I went there, Roger Close was there. Really good table tennis people.
I've got to give a shout out to Henry, because Henry, being our paid coach, Henry put up with Adam and Sam playing on their own during the day, 1-to-1, with no one else in the hall often, and absolutely screaming and shouting and beating each other up. And Henry's trying to do the paperwork, and he's having to put up with that Adam and Sam on table one, having another practice with all sorts of things going wrong and all the frustrations that young adolescent boys have. So well done, Henry, and putting up with them, as well as Henry and Tony playing with them and nurturing them.
Yeah,
Tony West, both big influence.
I mean, I think what Sam is proof of, and obviously Adam is a coach of the club structure. If you've got a good club structure, which is when you think about Kingfisher, a good club structure, we've got like North Ayrshire and Dumfries. I think you have a chance. But what I want to do now, Sam, I'm just going to go a little bit off key. You're in Sweden now, as we speak.
Yeah.
It's nearly 9 o'clock bedtime. And are you the only backspin player within your group? Are there a few of you? And do you find the training is universal, or is it specific to your needs? Tell us about Sweden.
Yeah, yeah. So I train in Eslöv professionally full time. There's lots of players here. We don't split it into groups. Everybody plays with everybody, depending on standard and stuff. But there's people who go to school in Sweden and play table tennis while they're going to the local school. And there's people who come abroad, like me, for example. And we'll mix together. I'll play with the school. Not that they are any worse players, of course. They're great players. So it's basically they put you with whoever they think is best for you on the day. They set universal exercises. However, they come over to me and set me specific exercises for my needs. And you can always kind of ask the coaches, I want to work on this, or they'll suggest something specifically to you. I think that's really important for a player, because as I spoke about before, there's no point, and I can't say there's no point, there's some point hitting a million balls, but if you do it wrong, you're not going to get any better, and you might even get worse. So it's really about what you're doing and understanding why you're doing it. And there's one more defender here, just came here. He's from Holland, a bit of a lower level. But apart from that, I'm the only defender here.
Can I just bring in?
You just said defender.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to look on. But if I can bring in Colin here. I mean, you raved about your time in Sweden, Colin. It gave you a new philosophy. You came back, you educated us all. I worked with the top Swedish coaches at roughly around the same time. Was it your influence why Sam's in Sweden, or is it coincidental?
It's more Table Tennis England, and because we employ Table Tennis England employs Marcus Gustafsson. And it was actually Marcus that brokered the offer of Eslöv when it was mentioned, and Marcus already knew that I was a fan of the Swedish system in the 80s before Volden Persson, Lind, Appelgren, etc. did their thing. I was there at the time that was building before it happened, which was just amazing to see, and it was just like this is actually going to happen. Sweden are going to take China in the World Men's Team Championships, and they did it on more than one occasion. It's fantastic. So he already knew that I was a fan of Sweden and had some sort of philosophical background around it. I think Sweden actually lost quite a lot of it in the 90s and the noughties. So I was just enthusiastic that Sam could go, and I crossed my fingers that it'd be a good environment. And we need to thank the guys there. It's been a good environment for him, I think.
Oh, good. I'm just going to, again, like I always do, I'm just going to bring Adam in for a second. Adam, you made a very big impact at our summer school. People still talk about you now more than your dad, but we'll keep that quiet. Very personal touch with all the players, loads of good feedback. Do you think it was that grounding at Corby that made the transition to coming to Scotland and working in a completely foreign environment? Because you just seem to slot in.
Yeah. Thanks for pulling me in there, David. Dave Fairholm. So, I think we were very blessed in Corby to have great tables, great floor, great lights. But you don't need that to be a great player. It's helpful, but you don't need it. And what we had more than that was a great culture, and that's based around the people that are there. So wherever you go, whether you've got tables, whether they're good, whether they're not, whether you've got good lights, what kind of flooring you've got, it's the people there that make it. And I think everyone's going to agree in any club. It's the people that make it. And so that's what you've got to focus on. That's what I like to focus on is the people.
Yeah. So therefore you just simply, you'd come from Corby, you came to Inverclyde, and you just simply adopted the same philosophy, but with different people.
Same thing, different tables, but the philosophy and the culture is still the same.
Yeah. Okay, right. I'm going to go, Mark, back to you on the more technical stuff.
Yeah, so just to pick up a point that you said earlier, Sam, where if you go back and watch all these sessions that we run, and I seem to be championing this, is that we've been trying to, what makes a good player, basically, and what mentality does it take? And something you said earlier about when you took a loss about a player that played really quickly, and you went to the hall, and you and Adam worked out what you needed to do. And I think I just wanted to raise that point, as I found that fascinating, that a player needs to, from a young age, must take influences or basically take control of their own career, and a coach is there to help them.
Yeah.
And it was really to get your point of view on that, Sam. What's your thoughts on that? About you, obviously, from your perspective, that's what you did, but do you see enough of that in maybe English table tennis or the club that you're at?
Well, I think, first of all, it's hard to know what anyone's thinking, because the other juniors around me, even in the England squad, probably didn't know that was my approach. So I can't really say what their approach may or may not be. But I think it's really important for you especially from a young, to have a look at why you're winning points and why you're losing points. I think that's the main thing. I think I see a lot of the time young kids that, and it's great to build in all the basic shots, but I don't think there's enough thinking going on. I think that's what sets table tennis apart from many other major sports, is thinking, and how much of a mental game it is. Because if you have all world-class shots, but you don't know how to play, you're not thinking where to serve, when to do the shots, you could be not any good at all. So I think that's really important. As a whole. So I can't say I don't see that specific thinking, because I don't know specifically what they're thinking, but I do see a lot of.
Do you know what, Sam? I think the point that you're making is it's about that individual game. So you're absolutely right, without really touching on that point, is that your career in this individual sport is about you. What others do, to be honest, isn't really your concern. And obviously, what I'm taking from it, that mindset is that you need to concentrate on what's right for you. And then obviously passing on tips to others, exactly what you're doing there, is a fantastic point.
Yeah, of course. And, and I take a lot from other people, from my wins, from my losses, from people who are better than me, from people who were not as good as me. I think you can always learn something from everybody. If it's something on the table, if it's attitude, if it's how they prepare for a match, if it's stretching, if it's physical, you can always learn something.
Brilliant. I mean, just to go on to the technical side. Now, no one would have thought this type of question would come from me, but talking about the physical side of table tennis, and the more the sort of being a defensive player, hybrid player. I still don't know what terminology we're going to do it tonight. But obviously, Sam, you look like, even through Zoom, you look like a fit lad. But how much does it take out of you? Obviously, your training regime, and how much more effort do you think you have to put into others? And again, I'm influenced by Pete Shaw in that sort of answer, asking that question.
Yeah, well, I think you have to do more. I think you have to do more physical. I think you have to do mostly more cardio. I think that's the main thing, because you've got to be able to play the long rallies, because if you if you get tired, you can't play the same, you lose concentration, obviously you can't get to the same balls. I think that's the big difference. But I think I've never thought of the mindset kind of, oh, I have to do so much more than the other players, or oh, that's a bit rubbish or whatever. Because if you think like that and you think, oh, it's not fair or whatever. I mean, my dad taught me a great thing when I was young, because I was saying, oh, life's not fair, blah, blah. And my dad said, you're right, life isn't fair, so get on with it. And it was just a great life lesson for really anything that you want to go into. You can say someone's getting more opportunities and whatever, life's not fair. So it's fine, just get on with it.
I learned that partly from Dave.
Yeah. And so I think you've got to do more physical. That's part of it. But I think you've got a big advantage as a defender if you're physically fit and they're not, because you're forcing them to play your game, the other way around. So if I've been doing 4 or 5 hours of cardio a week and they're not, when they play an hour-long match against me, I've for sure got the advantage. That's how I see it.
Well, I'll probably say you probably have an advantage over me, but we'll just push past that. I mean,
is there anything on the chat?
Maybe come back to that, Dave. Maybe a question for Colin later on. I mean, talking about more like, and this was to go around Sam, Colin, and Adam. That mental edge. Now, Sam, you mentioned earlier about obviously mental health and how table tennis, obviously getting back into it again, helped you. But we've obviously talked about the physical side of a hybrid player. That I'm settling on that term, by the way. On the mental side of being a hybrid player, how strong do you have to be there? I mean, is there any extra work that you do? And it'd be good to hear Adam and Colin's thoughts on that, about obviously helping Sam with his career, trying to keep that, because obviously in a tight point, there must be so many longer matches, and trying to keep that mental edge.
Question for me, yeah? Or those two?
If you want to kick off, Sam, yeah.
I think it was from early on, I think it was kind of a mindset for me to fight when I'm down and to fight in the long rallies and stuff like that. But it does require training. I think a lot of people miss this mental training. And I get a lot of that from my dad, of course. Being a partially a mental coach is his job. I think people, train. They'll train on the table. They'll do a bit of physical and whatever, but they'll forget the mental training. And there were many times where me and my dad would sit down for an hour or two a week and go through mental sessions dealing with different issues. For example, going back too far or not being able to think clearly, and why that is specifically. And also physically, I'd like to say big thanks to my physical coach, Ron Still. I used to get a lot of injuries when I was defending. I was quick and agile, but I used to get injured all over the place. So he's my dad's current roommate, and he has a really good history. He was a sprinter himself, 10.6 best 100 meters, something like that. So really quick, and this was a long time ago as well. And he got me stronger, fitter, and reduced the injuries, which is just exactly what I needed.
Adam, what about the mental edge? What advantage do you have, or obviously helping Sam, and maybe in your own coaching career, what work do you do as a coach on that mental side?
Yeah, so I kind of see the game in two separate sides on the mental side. You've got the long term and the short term. The short term is, you get to 10-10, but you've also got the long term aspect of it, and how you view training, those kind of things. And I think that's very important as well. So, I'm touching on a word that Sam used a lot, is learning. We didn't think of training sessions as training sessions. We saw them as learning sessions, is what we were doing. And our goal was, we may not be the best right now, but if we're learning faster than everyone else, it's inevitable you are going to be the best with time. And I think partly we'll call it a defender, hybrid player, whatever you want to call it. We were aware that the peak is a little bit later, as long as you stay fit. So we didn't feel the pressure. We had to get really good right now. We just knew we had to be improving faster than everyone else. So we wouldn't say training sessions, we would say learning sessions. And it sounded strange, but we're drilling that into our minds. We say, Sam, you want to go for a learning session? And they didn't look like training sessions. We weren't blitzing multi-ball, doing the same ball 4,000 times. We'd do it 5 times and say, yeah, I know that now. What's next? It was brainstorming sessions. We had the flip chart out. And I think that's a big mental side of the game, and how you view a learning session, a training session, is very important. And that's half of it. And then the other half is, what do I do at 10-10? But I think solving that first half, will solve 90% of your improvement. So that it's never a 10-10 issue. You beat them 11-2, done. And the 10-10s are against so much better players. And that first part of the mental game, the long-term aspect of it and the big picture, will support you in the short term at 10-10, because we're not going to lie, it does come with a slight feeling of arrogance, and that is helpful in sport in a way at 10-10. You think, I know that the way I've been training or learning is better than you, Mr. Person at the other end of the table. So I now feel a little bit more confident when it gets to 10-10. So it's a funny way that we like to think of things. We encourage other people to do that as well. And so that was kind of the part of the culture that we built at our club, and the kind of the culture that we try and build wherever we go when we train, whatever building we're in. We try and pull everyone into that environment, that learning environment.
Colin, before I come to you, if there's any way I can invest in the Wilson boys of how you do training in a business, I think I'm already signed up. If I've got any spare cash, I know where to invest in it. About how you obviously this learning session and how to get better at table tennis. I think these boys are onto something. Colin, anything further to add to how? So obviously, I think a lot of this maybe come from you, of how you've influenced them. What's your thoughts to Sam and Adam on that mental edge of the game?
Okay, so so if you want any business coaching, give us a shout. Be happy to make sure that you get more out of it than I do. But that's kind of what I do for a living now. But I still love the table tennis as well. You've heard from the boys, and Adam's talked about the culture. So it's the kind of culture that we want to make it actually in practice much lighter and much more fun than the intensity of this conversation. But we're kind of packaging it into an hour. But yeah, so within that, we've got the lightness, the grace, the learning, the fun, but always with that intentionality. And yes, what we're trying to do in each session is to improve faster than anyone else. So if we can go to a tournament, whether you get to the quarters or you win it or whatever, did we learn 3 times as much as anybody else about what to do next and how to do next? And can we fix any of the problems that we came up that were specific in that tournament that we can remember? the mantra was fix it by Monday night. So Monday's session was just like saying, how do we fix what went wrong? So that was quite common. In the long term, I think I want to make the boys independent and happy and capable. And contributing to society. If Sam stops playing tomorrow, then that's fine by me, and I hope that what will be left will be that kind of individual that's good for the world to have around. That's me as a dad, and that's my philosophy. In terms of the mental edge in a match, let's have a think about it. People talk about 5 elements that make a table tennis player. Underpinning it all, performance lifestyle, so eating the right food, going to bed at the right time, etc., underpins a 4-box model of physical, mental, technical, and tactical. The physical is the next base of the pyramid. because without the physical, you can't do it. It can't be at the top of the pyramid because physical on its own doesn't do anything. I know lots of marathon runners that are no good at table tennis. So physical is a base. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition to do well, and that's why we work hard on physical, because it provides that base. Then you've got two areas. On the physical side, you've got the biomechanics and the technical, and on the mental side, you've got mental ability, both in terms of the way that you think in the moment and your overall mental approach. And then what you've got on top of that is the match, which is love all, 10 all, and that is where you use your tactics. What is tactics? What does tactics mean? Tactics is about when to use your strengths, when to use your power, when to use your armory. And that sits on top of the technical and the mental. So tactics is a combination of technical and mental. It kind of requires both to be there. And we work very, very hard on technical purity, if you like. It's individualized for every player, but it's very, very strong philosophy at Corby Smash that we are good, very, very good technically. The reason is, if your technique isn't there, then if there's a tactic that you want to use, then you can't employ it because your technique's not strong enough and versatile enough to employ the tactic that you know is right. So we've got the mental side, which is when it gets to 8 all, you really don't want to be the other guy. And also the technique has to underpin it, because you can only have that feeling if you know that as the opportunities arise from 8 all onwards, let's say, that you're able to deliver against the knowledge that you have. So that's tactics is a combination of technical and mental. So they all have to be strong. That's based on physical, and that's based on performance lifestyle.
Brilliant.
If I could just come in, Mark, for while Colin was talking there, and this is what I find with team captaining as well, which is you're looking at it all different side. Sometimes it's impossible to captain a player because he's not, in simple terms, he cannot keep the ball on the table. So it's pointless in offering a style of game to play if he simply can't do it. And I've seen that at international level as well. And you know, when we had Ewan Walker and Gavin Rumgay and Colin of late and a few other players, at least when you offer some advice to them in between the games, then they are capable of putting it into use. Where sometimes if the game breaks down, then your tactics are hopeless, you know, and yeah, so that sort of adding to what Colin was saying, that unless all those ducks are all in a line, then your role as a captain is redundant. Right, Mark, have you got, are we Pete Shaw or are we Chatline or are we Mark Lundberg?
We'll go with a couple of questions. I think Colin's been doing a great job sort of in between when Sam and Adam have been answering questions on YouTube on the side. But there's a couple of questions. I think the first one from Graham Stevenson. Now, I know John Hilton. I didn't know the other defensive player, Norio Takashima. I think you answered that on YouTube for Graham. But Sam, basic question, who's your favourite? Hybrid, defensive, unorthodox, whatever terminology we're given, who's your favourite player out there?
Yeah, it's got to be Juicy Hook, the South Korean defender. Loved him for a long time. Just thought it's so graceful. So he does everything for a reason. You know, when you look, there is not a single shot that it might look like, oh, he's just chopping the ball back and they're hitting it. He's just chopping it. But if you look, slow it down and have a look, there's a reason he's done every single shot. He's consistent. He can attack on both wings. He can change it up. Yeah, just brilliant player. And I've watched him beat many of the Chinese on YouTube. I think favorite player, absolutely fantastic.
Adam, what about you? What about your favourite player?
I'm going to say boring, but I think you have to go Janove Voldner.
Yeah,
I think you know, and as Dad, you know, Colin was saying about his time in Sweden, kind of what we took back in the culture at our club and wherever we are. is that learning? And I think he sums that up and demonstrates that, better than anyone I can think of. It was learning sessions. It's so clear when you see him play. He's thinking. And it's not just thinking. It's studying, analyzing, being creative, graceful. But I think if you want to be the best, you've got to see it in a different way to everyone else. I think the slightly longer answer here won't be too long, but I see the game, what I've learned from my dad and stuff, as 3 parts, and you've got each part before you play every shot, and you've got perception, decision, and execution. And I think perception being what's on the ball, where's it going, decision, what am I going to do about it, and then execution, the execution of the stroke that you have chosen to play. And I think people focus very heavily on the execution, through multi-ball and things like that. But that is only one small part, and probably a fairly insignificant part compared to the other 2. And I think Genevieve Oldner shows how important and how much she's focused on the perception. What's on the ball? Where's it going? How quickly can I recognize those things? And then the decision, what am I going to do about that? Is this the best decision? Is there a better decision out there? And I think that's where we like to focus on a lot in the game.
Brilliant. Just to go to the final question that we have, which actually I think is a very good question. We're sort of flipping it a little bit, where it's about orthodox players, attacking players going on for the first time against the defensive players and then falling apart because they don't know what to do. So traditionally, I'd hope that obviously at your club, I'm sure it's a great influence to other club members, Sam, when you're playing against them and your style, and they're able to pick that up. But there is so many clubs out there which don't have an orthodox player, let's put it that way. They may play them in local league matches, and that's when they fall apart. When it comes to coaching or maybe younger players, and maybe kick off with you, Adam, and this one, obviously running sessions, is there something to say that if you don't have a defender or an orthodox player in the club, that you put funny bats together so they learn from it in case they play in the tournament?
To answer your question, and it kind of goes back to the point I just made, perception, what's on the ball? Yeah. And I think you've got to think differently than a lot of people do. That's how it works. When someone plays a stroke, or it's actually just before they've played it, once they've committed, you ask yourself, what's on the ball? What am I going to do about it? If you kind of turn into a robot playing attacking players all the time and attacking yourself, just topspin strokes when I say that, I think people can easily forget that is essentially what's happening every stroke and stop using that part of their brain. You can play topspin orthodox players and still question yourself. Where is that ball going? How much topspin does it have on it? How deep is it going? Ask all those types of questions. And then when you go to play a defender, it becomes much more easy when you're forced to ask those questions. Of course, you have to be comfortable seeing a backspin ball, but I think we just about all of us are, even lower rings in the local league level, which I've done, you see a lot of pushing. So we're used to backspin balls. What we're not used to doing is using our brains to figure out exactly what is on that ball. And I think that's what throws people when they play defenders for the first time. But you can train that muscle playing orthodox players. You've just got to force yourself to use that part of your brain.
Sam, what about you? How much pleasure does it give you when you bamboozle a player, maybe for the first time? And maybe in the early lines of a tournament, later on, how much, is that what you're aiming to do? Is that the sort of, to bring a bit of confusion?
Yeah, I'd say my aim isn't to play a new player I've never played before and just win because I've just bamboozled them, because I know the better I get, when I get better and better and better, the players aren't going to get bamboozled. It's not going to happen. They're going to have a defender in their club or their area or their national team or just practice partners on purpose to beat defenders. So yeah, when I was first coming back, I found it quite fun, but now not so much, because that's not part of my grand plan, because that's not a winning mentality. It's not. I don't see that as the way to win at all, really.
And Colin, briefly, if you hand over to Dave, what's your thoughts on the unorthodox at a club level of learning? If you don't have an unorthodox player, should the coach be basically introducing the weird rubbers, let's put it that way, to coaching sessions so they learn from it?
Yeah. Couple of things. What Adam said.
Yeah.
And then I would have all of the players learn how to chop and how to use different rubbers: anti-spin, hard bat, sandpaper, short pimple, long pimple. So in the fun bits, you know, at the end of the sessions, get people to use those bats. Two-sided first before you make it into a combination bat, just so they get used to it and just have a go at it. How do you beat a chopper if you don't know what it's like to be a chopper at all? I'm not saying you've got to be great at it, but if you're not even bothering to try and simulate in your mind what's happening in their experience, how are you going to expect to get inside their mind to beat them? And then when it comes to bamboozling at a higher level, I would say bamboozling is getting the other person to miss by 2 centimeters and not know why.
Yeah. Good. Well, hopefully that answers Graham's point. We obviously takes him to North Ayrshire Club.
Mark, if I can just come in there, I mean, last week we had Sue Strachan on from a different sport, and as I said, it's vital. You know, we learn from all sports. I think Colin mentioned that 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nicky Jarvis did. Now, if you take football in Holland, when they coach children, they have to play in every position. They've got to play in goal, right back, left back, centre back, left midfield, right midfield, centre midfield, striker, and wide. So they learn to become complete players. And sometimes I believe we take shortcuts in table tennis, that we think this is a way to win and it's working, but it's very short term unless you learn all the skills. Now, we have to move on because one of the questions that has been asked, and I'm going to start with Colin first, and Peter Shaw and I spent 30 minutes debating it, is we talk about fairness. And 40 years ago, before I started playing, actually, which you know that over 50 years ago, the net was 6 3/4 inches high. The table's always been 9 by 5, but the average height of a person was actually about 5. A tall person would have been 5'9" back in 1940. So that was the height of the person. The height of the net was 6 3/4. The table was 9 by 5. So Colin first, is it fair, the height of the net and the length of the table? Does it favour attacking players? And what can we do to topspin players? And what can we do to address the balance?
Okay.
If any.
Well, okay. Well, I don't think you need to change the size of the table. I think the table's a fine size. They did reduce the net from 6 3/4 inches to 6 inches because there are too many hard bat pushers, leading to too many rallies. But what's happened in the last 35 years is that the fast spinny rubbers are making the ball dip more and more and more, which effectively lowers the net even further than 6 inches. So if you were going to try and create some parity between a player who had spent 10 years attacking and the same player that had spent the same period of time chopping, it's not fair on Sam. Sam's having to go literally the extra mile, and it's very, very biased against the backspin player, and that's probably the reason why there aren't so many, because the topspin on the ball plus the lower net at 6 inches makes the net effectively about 4 inches, and that means that the hitter can slap the ball all over the place even off a pretty good chop. So the answer is, if you wanted to have more balance between topspin players and backspin players, either you reduce the friction on the rubbers, play short pimples, sandpaper, hard bat, etc., reduce the friction, or you would raise the net slightly. And I've thought about doing a way of doing that, because you don't want 2 players just pushing to each other because they can't get through. So what you do, you have a slightly higher net. And if you find that the rallies are going on too long, just like the expedite rule, then the net comes down and it never goes back up again in that match. So you could actually have a variable net. How about that for an idea?
Oh, wow. again, what Peter Shaw was saying, really interesting. He said, well, the attackers clear the net by a mile anyway because of the dip. So raising the net, he feel would not disadvantage. I'm just sort of throwing that in as an argument.
Disagree, Pete. Pete's a genius. I disagree with him.
I disagree. Yeah, I think you do see a lot when attackers play defenders. They clear the net by 6 inches or whatever, but the way they punish you is they hit it right over the net.
Yeah.
Because the closer to the net that you hit the ball, the harder you can hit the ball. Yeah. Of course, you can't. If you hit the ball a foot higher than the net, you can't hit it with the same speed because it'll go off the end of the table.
It's just all. I mean, it's one of those. I mean, in fairness to Peter, he was only
positing. Yes,
that's right. Yeah. Mark,
he's always playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anything? Any of Peter's questions? There were some very good ones in there, wasn't there? I don't know whether you can pick out another one before we finish, because we're slightly over time. I'll allow us to go another 5 minutes.
I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff that obviously Pete's talked about, and as one of our Scotland's leading defenders over the years, he obviously has a great point of view. I mean, one point they come up is like the whole service to a defender, or so I'm using that term, hybrid player. I need to get it right. Where do you serve? So this type of thing of trying to influence a game. So maybe 2 points about, just so we're very quick to go round, about what is the most effective serve. And then why, and we sort of touched on this before we went on air, was it like for me, my best shot's actually my backhand, but why as an attacking player do I want to go forehand influence when I'm playing against a defender? So just to go round, I'll start with you, Adam, just from this point of view of where do you serve, and then why do we get dragged into playing forehand against defenders and not use our backhands enough?
Yeah. Two quite different questions there, but they kind of work together. Where do you serve? It really depends on what you want. And I think that's, as a coach, I try and encourage people to work it backwards. Decide what ball you want to come back, then decide what serve you're going to do, not the other way around. So that's the first thing. Yeah, you'll take into account they may have different rubbers. So you can take that into account. Long, fast serves into the defender's backhand with no spin, where they're using their pimples. If you use no spin, not much spin comes back. There's different tactics you can use depending on what you want to come back to. But
okay, do you want to pick up there, Colin, as Adam's lost his signal?
What's the question again?
So where would you serve to? So if you're playing against that, and bearing in mind, I watched that YouTube video against Sam from a couple of years ago, so there's evidence of where you served against Sam, by the way. And then obviously, why as an attacking player do we get dragged into playing forehand orientation rather than actually using our best shots?
Okay, depends on the player. The simplest way to serve to a defender to get an advantage is to serve as high as you dare without them hitting, with either little spin, with either no spin, float. So a float bouncy serve is great if they're not going to hit it, because you're going to get a higher return. Nothing's going to be on it off the pimple, except if you play Sam, because Sam knows how to use a long pimple and chop the heck out of a chop ball. But generally speaking, or the other one is to serve with heavy backspin to a long pimple. Ball comes back topspin, and then you hit it really hard. So you're half long, heavy backspin serve. When they push it, you just basically loop the loop. You loop as if it is as if it's a counter loop. That's the quickest way to get them off balance if you're trying to do that.
Third ball attack key, basically trying to get the hard shot in quickly.
Well, if you can, why not? If it's not working, then you've got to be really, really confident that you're more consistent than the backspin player, and you can play them around the court. Lots of drop shots, make them do all the work, make them cover the whole court all the time in the longer rallies. But if you're looking for to win the point and get a heavy advantage short in the rally, I would do those. And the other one is to serve really short into the crossover and then really long if you can afterwards.
And what about getting attacking players dragged on their forehand and not using their backhand enough? Do you think that's true?
Oh yeah. I think attackers playing choppers and using their forehand all the time are mad. You can take the backhand earlier. So if you've got a decent backhand loop, forehand loop, they chop it, comes to your backhand. So you just basically do lines and diagonals. So loop down the diagonal with your forehand, they chop down the line, loop with your backhand down the other diagonal, pick it up nice and early. Give the chopper less time.
Easy as that. Sam, what about returning these serves?
Yeah. So I've thought a lot about this, especially recently, actually. What do I want from my serves? And my dad and my brother are completely right. Depends on the player, of course. And that's where you have to have 30 different serves in your bank, and you'd be able to, having the technical skill to be able to deploy those at the right moments tactically. For me, and I think probably quite a few other defenders that I've seen, backhand serves work well for me, because then I'm in a central position for the table to be able to hit and chop. You just feel sometimes a bit when I'm start with a forehand serve, I'm a bit kind of disorientated and I can't get back into position as easily, but of course completely depends on the player. If I serve backhand and they've got no problem with it, then serve forehand. If they got a problem with it, then just serve forehand the rest of the game, for example. And what was the other question again?
It's probably more against the fact that obviously you probably train against it, but you're used to probably retrieving or your more defensive shots against forehands. Where
Yes.
Colin made the point brilliantly, is that people are mad. Get your backhand in quicker. You've got more chance of basically doing that. And that's probably something you're training that you're probably trying to counteract.
Yeah.
Can I just sort of, I'm mindful we've really gone over now. I just want to put a point to Colin. We've looked at a lot of the techniques. We've looked at thinking about the game, the right preparation. But in your own individual case, Colin, you were superb against defenders. How much was that down to just hours and hours against Dave Barr? What percentage would you have said that contributed to your success? You played for hours and hours against a backspin player. Would you say?
I beat Dave the first time I played him.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yeah, and I beat Matthew Syed the first time I played him, and I beat John Hilton the first time I played him, and it took me until the third time to beat Dougie Johnson. So I think I was naturally good at playing it because of the way that I'd approached the game, just the way that I thought about consistency and reading the ball, and spatial awareness of the opponent. So actually, I think that was already there. I played with Dave Barr because he was the only one I could play with sometimes. But no, I think it's really important to spend time playing against good defensive players, and I think it makes you better against an attacker as well to have played quite a lot against a defensive player, if indeed you can get hold of a good one to play with.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I'm going to finish with an apology. Last 2 weeks ago, Colin asked the question of his own game, and he asked my opinion, and I said, Colin, I think it was a 60-40 player. No, you were right. You were a 50-50 player. And some people used to say you were lazy, and that's because you was a left-hander who had a backhand and a forehand. And because you wasn't always running round to your backhand, people would think you were lazy, but it was because you had a backhand.
Thank you very much.
So I stand to be corrected.
And Dave,
I
think that's why
a very serious technical point is, to all our listeners, is Colin probably was the original player who wasn't afraid to hack it against Pimples, knowing he was going to get a topspin ball back. Everybody else was terrified of doing it because they wasn't quite sure. And it was Colin who was probably one of the original players in England who says, I'm going to hack it, put a lot of backspin against the Pimples because I know I'm going to have a topspin return, and then I'm going to play. Definitely, the rest of British table tennis was floating to Pimples then because they was terrified of what might come back. Right. Mark, we are almost ready to finish, but I've got a feeling you're dying to ask one last question.
No, it was just a funny point because obviously it's been great having Colin on for sort of the last couple of weeks, but I think that point you've made about him having good backhand is why he was so dismissive of my first question a couple of weeks ago about why do left-handers be forehand orientated. Now I understand why Colin had a backhand compared to other left-handers.
Yeah, did it? Yeah, good balance. Yeah.
Oh,
Look,
thanks,
we've got to finish. As always, we run over. I don't apologise for that because, you know, we all enjoy it so much. So, Sam from Sweden, I'm sure we're going to have you back again because I'm sure there's going to be people wanting to know all about playing professionally in Sweden. Colin, obviously, we'll see you at the summer schools. Mark, I'll see you every week. And Adam, what a great contribution. And once again, Matt, thanks for holding the ship. So we'll be back to Monday next week. Not quite sorted out the topic, but I think it's going to be on club structures. Okay, so thank you to all.